Welcome to Dil Ki Recipes on your favorite social media platform. Hi, I'm Dr. Sheeza Mohsin, executive coach, relationship expert, and your coach in this virtual space to support you and your Desi family in America. If you identify as being a person of color, a minority, and having some form of bicultural identity, a major goal of putting this information out is to help you realize you're not alone in this journey. If you identify as a Desi with cultural roots in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and surrounding areas, trying to meet your life and relationship needs and desires while embracing some beautiful elements of your cultural heritage, Dil Ki Recipes is for you. If you don't identify as a Desi, but have a warm, loving, human being kind of disposition and you want to better yourself, I think you'll find some good stuff in here as well. So let's go on with the show. All right, so today's topic is a very important and valuable one in my mind because I have gotten umpteen questions and I made a list before I started today because it impacts so many of us in our lives, especially if you identify as a minority, but even just human beings in general. All of us, I believe, are in this space together and in the struggles and joys of this space as well. And that topic is managing friendships and some of the challenges that come with them. What is interesting to me is the plethora of questions that I was given by friends, by clients about friendships. What we notice nowadays is that there is definitely a shift. You know, in the olden days, I don't know, once upon a time maybe, a lot of the reliance on emotional support used to be from family. As family systems have become a lot more complicated, we find ourselves in these spaces where friendships become very important in our lives. And with those friendships, we experience a lot of joy. And I notice this in every generation. My Gen X clients, my Gen Z clients, millennials, even some boomers. We talk a lot about the good times we have with our friends. What I'm also noticing are some of the challenges and a lot of pain sometimes that these friendships cause, and which was the reason that I thought maybe we need to talk about this a lot more, as I was noticing a pattern in the questions that I've been receiving lately about these situations. So I will be looking at my phone for all these topics that I have been told by clients, by loved ones, to make sure I talk about, because I've talked to them unofficially at dinner tables, at gatherings, because I do get bombarded with these questions when I socialize or I meet people, or also when I'm speaking at events. So first, I want to start with what is beautiful about friends. You know, your friends give you that energy. They give you that break. They give you that look into yourself, that insight that very few people have. And sometimes even family members don't know us as well as our friends do. And I'm noticing that continuously for many of us. Those of you who have many friends might see yourself accessing friends in different areas. You might have social friends, you have friends that are school friends, or friends you confide in who are your safe places, friends that you feel very close to when you do spiritual, religious activities, friends that you connect with when you are participating in sport activities. So a lot of hobby-centered friendships, a lot of socially centered friendships, a lot of friendships that come out of work relationships. So there is that variety. The challenges, though, are also as much, hopefully not more, but quite a bit when it comes to comparing them with the joys of these friendships. So what I'm going to be talking about is a mishmash of elements I'm noticing that I think are not maybe as healthy and may need another look, and also elements that could be prevented if you are a little bit more conscious about those dynamics in your friendships. So I have a collection of complaints, situations that I will be going through. Hopefully you will find some of those valuable. So let me look at my list and start. It's really important to talk about this because these relationships are beautiful, but they also require care. And so here are some things you can do to make sure you are aware of where you are not exploiting a friendship, where you are really nurturing this friendship for growth and longevity. You don't want this friendship to die or burn out. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is this idea of using your friends as pseudo-therapists. So what I notice, and this happens a lot in different areas. So for my Gen Zs, I hear that a very harmless conversation starts, for example, and I'm giving you an example, about a romantic relationship. Now at this point, this is a very entertaining conversation. Everybody's having fun. You have a crush. You like someone. You got noticed by someone. Awesome. Fantastic conversation. We're going to talk over breakfast, lunch, whenever we meet, hang out. The turn happens when maybe, for a good reason, that relationship materializes. And now you are giving a scene-by-scene update to all your friends about this relationship and how it's proceeding. And I will tell you that can be very sabotaging because you're really not here or there and you are not experiencing the relationship in its authentic space and giving yourselves the privacy to actually nurture that romantic relationship. It almost is at the risk of becoming entertainment for your friends. I am not a fan of that because I see a lot of people get hurt when confidentialities are violated. Too many people know too much. So what I would love for you to do is just do a little bit of reflection to notice how much you do that. Because if you really are looking for that long-term committed relationship, are you also feeding that as a conversation piece? So that's one element of where talking about this with friends can become too much. The second space I see is a lot of my millennial clients, I notice, will trauma dump because millennials are more right now in that stage of life where they may be in committed relationships. And now they're trauma dumping their romantic or their marriages with their friends. And I will tell you that that is a very, very difficult thing to come out of for multiple reasons. So I'll give you an example. You're married for a little bit. And now, while a lot of people don't talk about their marriages, some people do. And those of you that do, that becomes a source of entertainment sometimes. And I'm not saying this happens all the time. I'm talking about when this is not balanced in those friendships. There are certain people who know too much about private matters in your marriage, in your relationship. And then they start giving the vibe and energy. And people are not stupid, and neither is your spouse or your partner or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, significant other. And then they start feeling like they're being treated or looked at in a different way by those people that you have overshared with. So it's really important to manage and respect the boundary and privacy of your relationship with your friends as well. Especially if you're looking forward to have fun as a couple, hang out. Be careful. Notice how much you are sharing or oversharing. So it is very important that you notice how you keep your relationships private, your romantic relationships private, and not mix them with friends. Situation number 3 that I just want to touch on is if a relationship is going south and you know that this relationship, this marriage, there may be a breakup that is about to happen. Please, 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 this is when I would highly recommend you consider getting professional help. Because here, when you start sharing information, you are sharing information when you are hurt. When you're hurt, you know that your executive functioning is not working. Your smart brain is not working. You're a lot more gullible. You are a lot more prone to act a certain way just based on what feels right. And those feelings that you're feeling when you're going through a breakup or a divorce or considering that are extremely, extremely volatile. They change by the minute. And so you don't want to act impulsively on something your friend is suggesting strongly because they're trying to rescue you. They're trying to be the advocate for you. And the worst part is if what they are saying is not working after you tried it, the blame transfers on them. So this is a very important way and reason why you need to protect your friendships from too much oversharing of your romantic relationships and be sensitive to not oversharing intimate things that your partner, your spouse may have shared with you that were just meant for your ears. And now they're being publicly shared by what you think is a close group of friends. And the confidentiality by every share is becoming diluted. So the other thing about friends, and this is continuing the topic of friends and balancing romantic relationships and friendships. Remember, your friends are there for you all the time. When you text, when you are making social plans, when they're including you in events and plans. But what ends up happening for those of you who are new in romantic relationships, even newly married, there becomes an imbalance and there becomes a hyper focus on your marriage or your relationship, and you end up losing or isolating your friends. I will tell you to make sure that you are protecting your friendship and having a really wholesome conversation with your partner, with your significant other, about how you have these important relationships in life that you want to preserve, that you want to nurture, that make you who you are, that make you happy. I will tell you that this is not just good for your friendships, it's actually good for your marriage and your committed relationship, because what is happening when you are isolating from your friends, of course, you're hurting your friends. So when things are not working out in this relationship and you go back, your friend is going to be like, okay, dude, like, where were you? And now you're showing up because you have time for me. So if you're not prioritizing, there may be some resentment or some negative feelings that your friends might feel. I'll tell you the one major positive reason why you should have balanced friendships, especially when you're in a romantic relationship or in a marriage, is because when you do so, you are not heavily burdening your relationship with your significant other or your partner to meet all of those needs for you. You know, one of the reasons, and again, I have multicultural background, and I will tell you one of the reasons that I notice relationships fail more is when the person does not have balance, and when there's too much focus, too much weight on this romantic relationship to meet needs that could healthily be met by like 5 people. There are only a couple of things that have to stay very, very intimate to your romantic relationship or marriage. Other than that, many of those things can be outsourced. Actually, it's very healthy for you to have other friendships, to have other hobbies, to have a balance in your life. Because if you are together all the time, you have no newness. You get bored with each other. You're not bringing new material, new information, new experiences to talk about with your partner. So that's really not healthy. And also then your expectations from your partner become very, I want to call it controlling, because you're thinking you're sacrificing time by giving up on your friendships. And so now your partner has a lot more weight on what they need to fulfill for you. Not the most healthiest alternative. So something to think about in terms of preserving those friendships. Another thing that I notice, and this is more maybe millennials and Gen Zs, because Gen Xers actually get annoyed by this, is analyzing your digital communications with your friends. Well, they left me unread for a day. They did not like my post. They actually posted something on their private story for this friend, but they did not post anything for my birthday. They did not share what I posted. So there's a lot of psychoanalyzing of how digital media is used in friendships. And I really, really want you to think about your need, how social media is interacting or messing with your idea of what a friendship means when they do that or when they don't. And yes, absolutely, you cannot minimize it, because right now that is also a love language. Social media is a love language from the model of the old 5. I keep building on, additional love languages that keep coming up from my perspective, added to the list. So how you express your friendships on social media does matter. And so my clients who are college students will tell me, Sheeza, you don't understand. If my streak is not maintained with this friend, that means something. And I get it. But I really want you to notice how much you're being affected by it. And of course, I'm going to put in the bleep of how much are you consuming social media, because that definitely now research proves has an impact on your mental health. So in your friendships, please notice what you're doing. I want to talk about the idea of harassing, bullying behavior on social media as well. You want to make sure that you are not doing things that are inappropriate and where you're crossing boundaries because you think somebody's your friend. They can take that humor, they can take that insult, they can take that kind of negative feedback in that space. So please be respectful. Sometimes we are a little bit more facetious with our loved ones than we are with somebody we have a formal relationship with. So please remember to be sensitive of those friendships. I know, and hopefully when I talk about dating in another episode, there's a lot of sensitivity to how texts are exchanged. What is the timing between responding or not? How desperate do you look? There's a lot more weight on that. So I just want you to make sure you're looking after your mental health. You are noticing your own anxiety around having to do those things between work, between family, and other obligations as you're managing that. So again, having a healthy perspective on yourself so you're not shaken too much by how your digital communication with friends is going, and having a position and actually some values and rules that you create in how you're going to interact in that space is really important. attachment. So this is a very important one that I want to talk about that affects all generations. And that is how you treat confidentiality in friendships when they are going south. I am sure many of you have seen the movie Sleeping with the Enemy. You've heard this term. It used to be used a lot more in romantic relationships, and I want to extend that to friendships as well. Because when you grow close in your friendships, you're oversharing. You're oversharing your deep vulnerabilities. And then when the friendship goes south, I notice that a lot of times people feel that that is time that they suddenly give themselves permission to violate that confidentiality and share intimate information that may have been shared about romantic interests, that may have been shared about opinions about friends, that may have been shared about other people, that is now used and weaponized in a very negative way. And I will tell you that that is very heartbreaking. And I will invite you to consider showing grace to your friends and not doing that. Because I will tell you, the person who does that when a relationship goes south, them sharing this kind of information about other people is a bigger reflection on them than it is about the person that they're talking about. Because everyone you're sharing this information with is looking at you and going, oh, wow, this person really trusted you. This person really shared the stuff. And yes, some relationships may go south in the process, but remember that you are going to be judged for how you show up in that not so negative space. Remember, friendships and romantic relationships are not just about sharing the best versions of ourselves. It's around managing the worst elements of ourselves and having some standards and having some boundaries and showing kindness and grace and practicing that. Say, you know what, regardless, whatever they shared with me is going to go to my grave, because when they shared it with me, our relationship, our friendship was really special. It was a very close friendship. So I will invite you to really reconsider, because I notice so much drama happening around friendships going south, because when your rage takes over and you feel that you may have just permission, slice and dice this person in front of inappropriate audiences who are friends, and you're making it so uncomfortable for the larger social group, that really isn't very healthy. In all relationships, in all ages, please respect the confidentiality and intimacy with which your friends shared intricate information, whether it's opinions about other people or their own personal secrets, even when your relationship is going south, because that's a much bigger character reflection of yours when you do that. One more item. This is more for my millennial and Gen X folks. I really want you to think about this. This is where relationships and friendships become heavy. Try to think about the pressure you feel in the areas of sharing and resource investment in your friendships. What do I mean? Especially in the South Asian culture, in the Desi culture, especially in cultures where there's a lot of gift giving, entertaining, socializing. There are weddings, there are birthdays, there are graduations. There's a financial investment that you seem to have to make to manage these friendships. There is, if you get invited, you have to return the invitation. There is a lot of that reciprocity of resources, time, and effort that sometimes almost become a subtle expectation. It's when people and friends may end up presenting manipulative by love bombing you with heavy gifts, with heavy things they do for you, and then you feel the burden, whereas your financial goals or your limitations might be different. So please understand how you manage money in friendships, because it does make things sour. It does put a bitter taste, because you really don't know what someone is going through financially. You know, money and romantic relationships are the things people comfortably share the least in their friendships, especially when you're a person of color, when you're a minority, when you're a desi. Those sensitivities are there. Be smart in not setting those expectations with your friends. Be generous in setting it up. Don't be love bombing and expecting and insinuating and suggesting. I see a lot of that happen. What I want to say is that friendships bring a lot of joy to us. So many people look forward to the social lives that are nurtured and built around hanging out with friends. So thinking about principle-based friendships that can really be nurtured in longevity, thinking about not oversharing, thinking about not having too much intensity and unreasonable expectations from those friendships will keep them healthy, will keep your friendships long-lasting, and hopefully you will continue to have beautiful, positive experiences in those friendships. Hope this material was valuable for you, and I will see you next time. Please remember to keep listening and watching as part of your weekly self-care and learning ritual. You know there are lots of commonalities in our lives, relationships, in our joys and struggles. And my hope is that this material will help you expand your perspective, give you some clarity on how to think about things, and ultimately make you feel better and sorted about your life and relationships. Hope you have a fulfilling and wholesome day.